Good afternoon. It is Friday. Hope everyone is feeling fantastic. Now, right before we dive into today's LinkedIn live session with myself and Thierry, please make sure that you hit like on the SALT LinkedIn button and make sure you subscribe and basically make sure you stay in touch for all the future LinkedIn live sessions, and then you can access on playback as well. Today, we're going to be going through a lot of the travel sector, a lot of travel trends, what we've seen in 23 and 24. But I'm just going to hand over to Thierry so you can get his intro and find out a bit more.
Yes, right. Thank you very much for joining us. As Dan said, my name is Thierry. I'm the head of data insight over here at SALT. And I'm going to be moderating this session. So what I mean by moderating is I'm going to be poking and prodding Dan for many of his insights and wisdom across SEO and how they therefore apply to travel. So yes, please do remember to subscribe, share, and all the good things that all moderators kind of say during this period. And also a great opportunity to wish Dan, happy birthday for yesterday, everybody. So there we are. But yes, just so we can kind of dive straight into it then, Dan. What does the landscape currently look like when we're talking about SEO for travel as it kind of stands right now? Or even 2023, and like how we got here?
I think that's a really great question because the 2023 was interesting. At the very start of the year, we had the advent of ChatGPT 3, which was really the first, I'm going to say, the public debut of AI for masses in terms of generative AI content and things like that. And then right towards the end, we had the 3 months of Google updates, the core updates, and I kind of guess the helpful content update as well, which I know from speaking to a large number of travel site owners across the thing, kind of really was a disruptor in not just travel marketplace, but all marketplaces. But yeah, travel, I kind of felt the brunt of it more than anything, especially in the kind of travel blog and guide kind of section.
And I believe you did a bit of a study on this a little while ago, kind of looking at, bearing the brunt, but where is that pain most felt, whether it's, with a helpful content update or, or talk us through a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, no, so I kind of feel the findings from that study I did. So for all context, I looked at just over 100, 150 travel blogs, which I just took off lists off the internet and I ran them through about a month after the helpful content that they rolled out. And when Reddit and Twitter were ablaze with the "oh my days, Google has destroyed my site" kind of messaging, and those kind of findings there, I feel, go to what Google has been trying to push as a narrative for a number of years with travel, but also what we're seeing probably as trends for 24. So a lot of the sites I saw got hit, for example, they suffered from authenticity and the value of being an authentic author and that kind of authorship. And I'm not necessarily just talking about eat with an E, whatever you want to call it, but it's that travel for so many years has been, and I still think is one of the most fantastic verticals to work in. But it's also because it's got such high demand, and humans are always going to have that desire to travel. Even in economic downturns, people travel. Post COVID, people have wanted to travel more to make up for that lost time. It's attracted a lot of affiliates, it's attracted a lot of bloggers, it's attracted that subsection, which all great profitable verticals do. But what the helpful content update did was it kind of went through with what should have been a scalpel, in my opinion. It should have been delicate, but it instead went through with a cleaver, and it took out a lot of websites. Which, being honest, I think out of about 100 plus sites I looked at, there was maybe one or two where I kind of went, I feel like you've been unjust here. You've been dealt a bad hand.
Yeah.
Some of the sites I saw be hit, and this is kind of where we also have to look at what our definition of a niche is. So one site I looked at over the course of 4 or 5 weeks on their own site under a single author, they'd covered everything from how to get a Canadian visa to the best rooftop bars in Philadelphia to top tips for visiting Italy kind of thing. So you've got this one author, this one umbrella, and it kind of goes to you can't be an expert and you can't be authentic in such a broad plethora of categories.
Yeah.
And that I feel has kind of been the downfall, because up until then it's about building authority, links, etc., content. And these blogs, whether or not they've been authentic or selling links or whatever their purpose has been, they've kind of got away with it. But now with AI increasing accessibility to that content, we'll have to go through it and go, yep, I need to cull what I'm spending resources on here. And unfortunately, travel's been quite hit badly by that.
Yeah. And I guess before we kind of, which we'll touch on later, the big elephant in the room, that's kind of landed. I just wanted to touch on this authentic piece of it. So I guess that within travel, there is, even from a social perspective, there is a whole definition of being authentic. And then it's really interesting. Like, I'd love to understand from your perspective and from even the study that you've kind of done, what does Google see as authentic? Like, what does that actually mean in the realm of travel to Google? So, I am a one-person marketing team within a travel business. How does authenticity manifest itself?
No, that's a fantastic question. So I kind of guess to understand authenticity and understand how that ties to authorship, we need to understand a little bit more about how Google's held this over the years.
Yeah.
So way back when, I say way back when, it was probably 10 years ago, we had authorship as a part of Google. Then when they introduced Google Plus, they tried to tie it to Google Plus authorship and your circles and your degrees of separation and all that whatnot. Obviously, two Google products that are fallen by the wayside into that wonderful the goldfish bowl in the sky, almost, of where all Google products tend to go now. It's even though, and I know Google says they don't use EAT in ranking systems, they don't use it for things like that. If you're producing content and your beneficial purpose, your sole purpose is focused around travel in Asia, and you suddenly start pumping out one piece of content a week, two pieces of content a week, and you're going Japan, Cambodia, South Korea, Malaysia, and you're just all around thing under a single authorship, and you're not actually putting out any other signals to kind of say, well, actually, these are actual genuine travel pics. I've actually traveled here. These are actual authentic things. And especially when a lot of content, I mean, it's about to that statement. Nobody intentionally goes out with the intention of producing bad content. That's universally accepted. But a lot of content in travel and a lot of these areas is seen more as a functioning means to an end. It's a piece of content written to rank for a keyword. It's a piece of content written to bring in a certain traffic or attract a certain user. Because of how many players are around the travel industry and how in depth a lot of the content goes, that's not enough anymore. And if you're going and producing 500 word articles a week, dotting around the globe, dotting about different topics, you kind of look at it and go, well, like, do you actually know what you're talking about here? Are you an expert in this? What is your qualification to be giving me these 5 best tips for layovers in Kuala Lumpur, for example? And that's where the investment needs to come. That content needs to no longer just be a means to an end or a building block in a wider function. It almost needs to look at it and be saying, well, how does this content help not so much us sell to a user, but how does it help the user buy the proposition we're putting down? How does it engage them? How does it get them wanting more? How does it get them more affinity with a brand and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's all about this human experience, right? So how do we authentically communicate that human experience if we're talking about travel and, you've peppered a whole load of destinations for the purpose of ranking. But when you actually look at it, you're like, how has one individual human even had the ability to travel to all these places and know the top 10 secret bars in Barcelona all the way to Malaysia? I think it does. Yeah, it kind of kicks that kind of trust in the knees as well as authenticity too. And as you said, 2023 has been turbulent, to say, for travel, and it will continue to be so, or will it? So I guess, knowing what we know about 2023, what does that next quarter, 6 months, 12 months kind of look like?
I think it really, brands and travel companies who adopt and understand that the landscape has shifted and that there almost needs to be a greater, in not necessarily investment in cost or investment in other things, but an investment in authenticity. Because the old adage is the old adage of being, you can be present in a room but mentally not physically not mentally. And it's almost like taking that same metaphor through to content in travel and how we position travel brands organically. And it's that, let's actually just be fully present. Let's be fully engaged, because let's be honest, it's 2024. Barely anybody in travel has a USP anymore. Unless you're literally doing the most niche thing in the world, like skydiving in Antarctica or something like that, you have very little uniqueness about you as a travel company. What you have is a set of value differentiators. Now, those value differentiators will speak to personas in different ways. They'll either speak to cost, they'll speak to experience, they'll speak to accessibility from certain airports and certain functions. Like just living in the UK, we know I know if I want to go to certain countries, I have to go down to like London Heathrow. I have to go down to the southern airports, which in most countries, I mean, people who aren't in the UK will be questioning them like, okay, yeah, that's only 2 hours or something like that. You've never been in the UK or travelled around the UK feasibly. So I automatically know that adds another day and adds additional cost and it adds friction. So it's how can those value differentiators reduce my friction points to actually make me want to do things? And that kind of also goes to what Google's been trying to do. So Google themselves have travel guides, which you can access through travel searches. So in theory, all these wonderful guides on how to visit certain countries and things to do, Google's already got that content. It's almost like he's doing a courtesy at this moment in time and surfacing websites, which is a courtesy I hope it continues to extend. And it probably will do after some EU legislation recently around travel flight trackers, which is another thing we can come on to. But 95% of the time, people are searching on travel stuff. Nobody ever kind of goes, right, I'm booking a holiday, goes on the same afternoon, and then just instantly puts the credit card details in and I've bought something. They're considered purchases. They have long lead times. They have multiple touch points. It's how can you not only make sure your brand and what your value differentiators are appear enough times and as many times positively within that journey, and sell at the right time, close at the right time, and don't be too pushy, versus allowing them to accurately and adequately forecast what their experience of something's going to be. I always kind of say that if I say to anyone, imagine an all-inclusive resort in Spain, for example, majority of people instantly start thinking of large, light or white-coloured buildings that are probably going to be in a curved shape. We've got the pools. It's a very homogenized experience for a lot of travel. So what makes that resort different to the other 50 resorts that all have a pools, all have adults only, all have swim up bars, that just becomes features. Is then how do we add those value differentiators in? How do we add the benefits in? And how do we make sure they surface and show up? Because yes, those features might matter to some people, but ultimately it's how that adds to the experience. Because nobody ever goes, no one ever wants to go on holiday and just to look at the hotel. They go for what the hotel enables as an experience, what is accessibility, destinations, and elements like that.
Yeah. And I guess then that kind of allows us to kind of naturally segment into the topic of AI once we're kind of talking about that user discovery phase, right? So this is where there is an intent to travel somewhere, and those individuals who have the ability to articulate their differentiators and values better will be able to kind of get in front of those individuals a lot more. But how is AI then and Google search generative experience going to disrupt that? And what kind of strategies as a business should I be imploring to, one, kind of build a garden wall for myself to kind of be like, okay, this is protected, but then also have a bit of an offensive strategy too, like, well, then now knowing what this landscape is going to look like, how do I grow as a business? How do I get new users, new customers, retention, etc. in the world of AI and this kind of SGE?
Yeah, I think for a number of years, travel has had to have a separation between that. Whenever I've spoken about this on other webinars, whenever I try to talk about SEO strategies, I try to book it into three camps. You've got your proactive strategy, which is user acquisition, growth, all the bells and whistles, raw nutritional graphs going up and all the rest of it, all that good stuff. You've got your brand strategy and how you can create that content mode and content elements around that. But travel, probably more than any other industry, has always had a need for a defensive strategy. Google went after hotels, it's gone after flights, it's produced travel guides, it surfaces reviews in its own way. It's always had its fingers very, very close to the honeypot and trying to get as much out of it as it can. Now, two things that we know that moving forward, there's legislation changes being where Google can't surface its flight tracker as much anymore across so many countries. So that's going to be impactful. That's a fantastic opportunity, but that also shows that there's potentially precedent for anti-monopolistic tendencies in Google in other areas. But let's assume there isn't going to be that. So we're always going to have a defensive element around this. SGE will take a portion of traffic away from the travel industry. How much that is depends on your exposure to different things, but not so much your exposure to the keywords it triggers, but your exposure to how well it can disrupt your user journey. So this kind of goes to the level of qualification and really understanding not the funnel of where your users come from, but what their journey starts with and happens. So good example of this being, I could be watching a TV show on Netflix, I could be planning a sport event, I could be looking for a honeymoon or something along those lines. There's always a spark that instigates what will then become an end journey of hopefully someone booking a holiday, going on a holiday, and enjoying the holiday. It could be business travel, it could be anything in that, but from a user to get to A to B, and actually that booking process, they either start off knowing what the destination is they want to do and when they need to do it. For example, if they're going to a sporting event abroad or a conference or something like that, or they know that country looks nice, I've seen it on TV, I want to visit that country, or I want to go away during this time or do these activities. And it's then how they move on that journey. AI will have different abilities, especially search strength experience, to disrupt and in places satisfy the objective of that part of the query. So if you're looking for best places to go in June, in, I don't know, North Africa and Southern Europe, search strength experience can probably hijack that part of the journey. It can summarize and present information, which is perfect for what it does. When I then come to actually booking that, however, it probably can steer me to companies. It probably has planted companies in my head from steering me to them prior in the journey, but it can't directly satiate the need for me to actually put my card details in and book something. So I still have to go to a vendor. So it's about not just looking at the keywords individually, but how does a user get to that keyword? Where does that keyword fit in their journey? And how can we work around that to not necessarily mitigate the risk to that keyword, because there's going to be some search terms directly that are just going to be lost, and that's going to be an acceptance that's going to have to be made. But how can we then build around that and almost create cluster moats to stay relevant, stay showing up? So at that point, because let's be fair, it's only at the point of purchase where we really have to show up. Somebody else can do all the legwork in educating a potential travel customer for the entirety of the journey. And as long as we show up at the end and we're the ones they choose to book with, that's really the end goal. I mean, it's great to have all the brand, build all the visibility and stuff, but ultimately it's that revenue drive. So there's a defensive strategy side that has to be put around SGE.
Yeah. And it's really interesting as well, because sometimes I think that we get really quite caught up in how AI is going to kind of disrupt the business side of things, and it's totally apt. You know, we've seen percentages go from anything from like it's like 6% to 60% or something silly. So like it's such a wide field of view. So you are completely right. Like, at what point do I believe that I can cater that audience need versus AI being able to do so? But also, I think the other side of the coin is really important, because AI, although from a business perspective, we're kind of integrating strategies to protect or attack on certain things, it's fundamentally actually going to create, ideally, a really great user experience. That's the idea of it, realistically, right? So, you know, we were looking at a travel trend report that showed from booking.com that showed 56% want insights and tips from AI when on vacation to kind of upgrade their experiences and suggest deals whilst they're literally on holiday. We've also got Skyscanner came out as well and said 44% of travelers are using AI to help them plan research. And it kind of varies across the market, but very much heavily leaning towards the US right now. So 63% of American travelers, whereas UK is very much in that 8% but growing phase and growing very, very quickly. So I guess there's also a complete audience insight piece here to go away and kind of research our our current audience and future audiences, and ultimately ask them what it is that they're kind of using AI for. So therefore we can understand as to when we need to show up or the type of content, when can we disrupt a certain flow or show up when necessary, versus thinking business first, right? And from a user's perspective, it's been incredibly powerful. Like, speaking as somebody who, both of us who are kind of looking to get married in the next couple of years and looking at things like honeymoons, etc. I personally use AI to, to support me in all of that. So whether it's, the discovery phase of discovering a destination, allowing it to personalize it to myself and my partner, looking at things like, trying to avoid on season places, right? So even understanding that, like, when does everybody else travel, and therefore if we're living in a bit of an inflationary period, how can I travel off peak in order to be able to offset that cost, for example? So yeah, I think there is a really powerful strategy that can be employed that is kind of customer and audience first, to kind of understand how they behave as a way of business strategy, as opposed to kind of just trying to kind of defend ourselves from a business perspective.
Oh no, absolutely. And I think the fact that users are already starting to use AI more, I think if we look at how technology has been adopted over the years by users in search, so I know image search has been more prominent with Google for at least 12 years, and we've been using elements of AI there. Voice search was obviously the big hoo-ha, because in 2016, ComScore, I believe it was, said something like 40% of all search by 2020 would be voice. It's something like that.
Yeah.
Somebody then amplified that statistic and it became rule of thumb, and it was the ship that never sailed. But the amount of devices and internet accessibility, and I know it's still even saying this in 2024, but for at least, I mean, the iPhone first came out in what, 2004, 2006? So yeah, it's something. So we're only 20. If it's 2004, we're only 20 years into smartphones being a part of our lives. And I can remember way back when I was in the mid to late 2000s, mobile phone contracts had very little data on them, and they were still charging you by minutes and texts. So we've come from that in 20 years' time to basically, oh, if you want minutes and texts, they're basically free. It's just a function. You're now paying for the data side. Generations have grown up with this technology for more au fait. They're more ingrained into daily lives than it has been, and it just increasingly has, as well as actual penetration and accessibility. So when all these features are coming out, and I also think the mainstream is that, so obviously Google's just released circle search, or circle to search, or bounding brackets, squiggle, draw, whatever you want to do. The fact that actual network vendors in major countries are pushing that as the value differentiator for the D Pixel phones to get people to sign up to contracts, I think the adoption of AI is definitely going to be much, much higher than we've seen with voice and we've seen anything else, because this has been a portal to the world for most people. I pretty much just use this now. Even if I've got my laptop on my lap, I'll pick my phone up and use it for something, because it's almost like an ingrained behavior. So we're going to see that adoption shift a lot quicker. So with the adoption curve being faster, we need to be more, not so much intelligent about how we process around it, but actually aware that that is going to be the user shifting behavior. So we almost need to be prepared sooner and more aware, and ultimately more communicative with other parts of the business as well as to how this shift is happening. Because I know some people are resilient to AI and resilient to SGE and other things, but there's going to be elements of this which they're going to be open to or not even realize they're using it. especially with things like Bard and Assistant getting the Gemini upgrade as well.
And I had a little look actually, and so the iPhone actually came out in 2007, which kind of further compounds, to be fair, your point as to that adoption curve and how it's going to be quicker than ever, and some people's lives have never existed without said phone, right? And they're coming really powerful buyers and passive and active buyers, as I say, within that field. And so I guess one of the things I've been asked quite a few times, and I'd love to put to yourself too, is that like I am an individual within the travel industry. We look to create content around great hotspots, etc. As to where people can travel. We do hotels, packaged holidays, etc. Your stereotypical brand. And I'm a marketing team of 2 to 3 people. Right. So I don't have a lot of resource in any way, sense, or form. How do I best prepare myself in the world of AI, SGE, and what's to kind of come in 2024 within the travel sector?
I kind of feel if you're a small team, resource is going to be big, and there's also going to be a lot of the BAU stuff that happens in your activities. If you're resource tight in terms of time and what you can actually action, understanding your exposure and understanding the risk across this is the most pivotal thing you can. And even down to the base point where this kind of ties back into things like GA4 setup being correct and being able to do cohort analysis correctly and things like that. If you could answer the question, I mean, I speak to a lot of companies, not just in travel areas, but if you turn around and ask most of them, what are your most important pages in terms of touch points? People usually point to, oh, we get the most conversions from, I don't know, this page or this page. It's like, well, if you think about it, you're going to get the most conversions from them because they're right at the bottom of the funnel. They're really, all the education stages have happened at that point. Whereas if you're in, you need to be in that touch point and understanding what is the influencing point further on that journey.
Yes.
So a good example, I'm looking literally through keyword sets at the moment for things like safaris in Tanzania. Wonderful part of the world, safari holidays are great. You don't just jump on a website and book one, and you don't just kind of move on from there. So what you end up receiving that is, it might be that I've done a lot of research and it's actually, I was looking at Masai Mara or Serengeti. I came into wanting a safari holiday based off that. I then decided further down the line to focus on Tanzania more broadly and in my area. So understanding whether or not I'm a returning user to the site, what touch points I've made, what content I've engaged with, and then how that's developed my journey helps you not take out a key part of that component. Because I've seen people kill content based on conversion and then wonder why things are falling down further down the funnel. It's a process, it's a pathway, and you need to make sure every step on that pathway is working.
And I guess it's a piece of like looking in before you look out as a business. I guess there are more things outside that will distract your attention, and you try to react to this, try to react to that. Oh my God, TikTok, and it's all a bit kind of overwhelming. Whereas, I think you are right. If you can kind of get your house in order and understand how people firstly kind of use you and behave in your site, and what leads people to certain things, I think that's a really powerful way of being quite efficient, both financially as well as resource ultimately. And just before we kind of start wrapping things up, I really wanted to push you for your one travel sector SEO prediction for 2024. So this could be anything from what happens with regards to AI, SGE, first party data, third party cookies, the whole spectrum. Feel free.
Cry. I think
it's a big one.
Yeah. Basically, what's the answer to the travel universe for 2024?
Come on, Mystic Meg. I want to hear the whole Mystic Meg approach.
I feel regardless of what your resources are, what time you can commit to things, and what your overarching acquisition strategy is and elements like that, the need and reliability to show authority, authenticity, and understanding that travel has potentially moved on from being an industry where you can kind of chase the buck almost and chase that kind of egg. It's not something you can game on anymore. And if you're looking to expand into new regions, expand service, expand destinations, it has to be done methodically. And there are some great examples of companies out there using AI and AI assisted content and elements like that. But the more competitive that region is going to get, the more competitive niches will be, it's not going to yield the same results because you've got the output, but it's also getting that reward. So for TLDR, I guess, authenticness, authority, almost kind of building up a moat around the brand, not just in terms of content, I mean individuals writing it, but a moat of why we should be listening to, and that creates your, and then transposes into your value differentiators.
Yeah. And there we go. You've had it there. You better have written it down or you've missed it. I'm joking. Well, this will all be made available for everybody to kind of watch back. It'll be popped on our YouTube as well. So please do make sure you're following us on all social channels, X, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. Thanks, Rags, always there to support. Love that. But yes, I just want to kind of finish things off by just saying a massive thank you to Dan. If there's anything that you guys have heard that you'd like a little bit more expansion on, please do connect with us and drop us a message. We're more than happy to kind of delve into anything and kind of have a little conversation there. But apart from that, please keep an eye on all future lives with SALT. We do truly have experts within the business that would love to share their thoughts. So if you do have any suggestions on things that you'd like us to talk about, please do let us know as well. And once again, make sure that you watch. But apart from that, have a lovely weekend. And thank you very, very much for joining us. And thank you, Dan, as well, for sharing your expertise.
Thank you for joining me, Thierry. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's joined. As Thierry said, there's going to be playback on this on LinkedIn, which you can access, and we'll also be posting it to the SALT YouTube channel. So as all people on live streams or webinars do now, please be sure to subscribe and like once it goes live on YouTube, stay in touch, and be sure to also follow the SALT LinkedIn page. Thank you very much, everyone.
Peace.
Bye.